Okay, chemistry students, now we're going to talk about nomenclature for covalent compounds. We were talking about ionics before, and now we're going to talk about covalents. They're a little bit easier, I believe, than ionics. I think you're going to have an easy time with this. First thing, covalent molecules. You do not need to worry about charges, because remember, covalent compounds do not give and take away electrons, they share. So they don't have a charge. So there is no crisscross involved. The covalent compound is composed of two or more nonmetals. Now remember, nonmetals, they share their electrons. An example, a molecule of chlorine, trifluoride, is 1 chlorine and 3 fluorines. Step 1, you're going to name the first nonmetal using a prefix. Pre means before, to indicate how many of that element was in the compound. Unless there's only one, and then there's no prefix needed. I'll give you an example in just a minute. 2, then you name the second nonmetal using a prefix. This time you must use the prefix. And then you change the suffix to IDE, or you change the ending to IDE. Now let's talk about our prefixes that we're going to use. If you only have one atom, you're going to use the prefix mono. 2 atoms is di, 3 atoms is tri, 4 is tetra, 5 is penta, 6 is hexa, 7 is hepta, H-E-P-T-A, 8 is octa, 9 is nona, and 10 is deca. Now let's go through some examples. So, this is a covalent compound. We know this because carbon is a nonmetal and oxygen is a nonmetal. So these two guys share electrons. They do not give and they do not take, so we don't have to worry about charges. First thing, we name our first element, our nonmetal. That happens to be carbon. Okay, C is carbon. So we're going to say, and there is one of them. There's not more than one, but on the first one, if there's only one, we do not have to put mono, so we just put carbon. Second here, O, that is oxygen. Now if we notice here, there are 2 oxygens. Our prefix for 2 is di. And then we do oxygen, but we change the igen to IDE, so it would be oxide. So CO2 is the same thing as carbon dioxide. Let's do our next example. N is nitrogen. We have 2 nitrogens. The prefix for 2 is di, and then we just name it nitrogen. We don't change that name at all. Now let's look at our next one. Our next one is O. O is oxygen. We have 3 oxygens. Our prefix for 3 is tri, and now we name it oxygen. But remember, we change our ending on all of our nonmetals, our second nonmetal, to IDE, so it's going to be oxide. So N2O3 is dinitrogen trioxide. 2 nitrogens, 3 oxygens. Next example, SO3. S is sulfur. We only have one, so I'm just going to put sulfur. We do not have to use mono if it's the first nonmetal only has one. Our next nonmetal is O. That's oxygen. We have 3 of them. The prefix for 3 is tri, and oxygen, and we change the ending to IDE. SO3 is the same thing as sulfur trioxide. All right, now let's go backward. We're going to have our name, and we are going to give our formula. We have dinitrogen pentoxide. Here is our prefix, di. Di means how many? Di means 2. Our next prefix is pent. Pent means 5. It's actually penta, but okay, so it says here that we have 2 nitrogens, which is N, and we have 5 oxides, which is O for oxygen. So our formula will be N2O5. Next one, chlorine monofluoride. There is no prefix right here. And if there's no prefix in the front one, that means there's only one. So we have one chlorine. Mono means one. Okay, so that means we have one fluoride, which is fluorine. We have one chlorine, which is Cl, and we have one fluoride, which is F for fluorine. So the formula for chlorine monofluoride is ClF. Now let's do the next one, nitrogen trifluoride. There is no prefix here, which means there's one, and nitrogen is N. Here our prefix is tri. Tri means 3. So we have 3. Fluoride is the same thing as F. So our formula will be N, we only have 1, and F, and we have 3 of those. So NF3. We have 1 nitrogen and 3 fluorines.